to it. If this is your first time with us in a while, we're going through the gospel according to John. We are in chapter 5 now, and we've been seeing how John lays out that Jesus is no mere rabbi, as we will see here today. So we're going to look at John chapter 5, the first 29 verses. It'll be behind me on the screen. It'll be in the Bibles if you pick up there on the table. It's the fourth book of the New Testament, about 3/4 of the way through the whole thing. It should be easy to find in there. John is a big book, has lots of big chapters, so not hard to find at all. So this is John chapter 5, verses 1 through 29. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roof colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, took up his bed, and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you're well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him, and this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." This was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing on his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself is doing. And greater works than these will he show him, so that you may marvel. For as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, so also the Son gives life to whom he will. For the Father judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son, so that all may honor the Son, just as they honor the Father. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but is passed from death to life. Truly, truly, I say to you, the hour is coming, and now is here, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself. And he has given him all authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. This is the word of the Lord. Well, as I already said, this, of course, is Oscar night. The big show is on tonight. Saw all sorts of stuff on the news this morning. They have a big tent out, I think, over the red carpet because of the rain last night, and there's a little threat of rain the rest of the day here, but it should be fun to celebrate and get together, as I talked about already. Hopefully you'll join us. Bring your friends. Everyone's welcome to our place. The address is on the back there. We'll give you more details at the end. But I love movies. Anyone who knows me knows I love movies. Are there 10 Best Picture nominees this year? I think I've seen 8 of them so far. I love going to the movies. It costs too much money, so I don't do it all the time, and now I watch a lot at home, of course. But one of the most fun thing about a lot of movies is what is called the big reveal. The big reveal in any movie is the moment when a central mystery is exposed or shown, or a character turns in some unexpected way, or really anything else that's absolutely unexpected that you could not see coming. And when they're done right, they represent some of the most memorable moments in cinematic history. Let me see if I can jog your memories with a few of the most famous ones by reading a few quotes from you from different movies. How about this one to start? I see dead people. They don't know they're dead. Where are they? Everywhere. How about this one? This one's an obvious one. Luke, I am your father. Most people label that as the greatest reveal in cinematic history. How's another one? Let's go a little bit back in time. Oh my God, I'm back. I'm home all the time. We finally really did it. You maniacs, you blew it up. Aw, damn you. God damn you all to hell. Probably didn't expect to hear that up here at a sermon this morning. That was my best Charlton Heston. Okay, so off the top. All right. Let's go a little bit further back. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I use that all the time here. We have lots of curtains up, so I'll do this. You'll see me setting up and say this. Perhaps the greatest movie of all time, though, absolutely one of my personal favorites. I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. You broke my heart. And kisses him on the lips, Godfather 2. Well, in our scripture today, we begin to see the biggest reveal in all of human history. It's not in a movie. It takes place in real life. That Jesus of Nazareth is not just another rabbi from ancient Israel, but is the eternal Son of God, come to earth, equal with God the Father, healer of the nations, resurrector of life, and final judge of every human heart. That's our key takeaway for this morning. I'll read it again for us. It's on the back of your bulletin there as well. Jesus of Nazareth is more than any mere spiritual guru. He's the eternal Son of God, second person of the Trinity, healer of the nations, resurrector of life, and the final judge of every human heart. Let's see how this comes into view now in chapter 5. If you've been with us so far up to this point, and if you haven't, you can go back and look at our YouTube page or our SoundCloud, and you can find all the messages that are on there. But up to this point, since the prologue, since the very first 18 verses of the book, John has been showing us witness after witness, along with the story of Jesus at a wedding, doing an incredible miracle. And through those witnesses and through that miracle, he's been beginning to show us and prove to us who Jesus is. Chapter 5 represents a shift from what he's been doing beforehand. We begin to see more and more miracles are presented as evidence of who Jesus is, along with more and more of Jesus' own words. Here, along with the miracle of water into wine at Cana, begins to peel back the curtain of seeing only the mere human side of Jesus of Nazareth. His unique divine nature begins now to show more and more through. As this happens, a new tension is going to arise between the Jewish religious rulers and between Jesus, a tension which will continue to increase all the way until the crucifixion, of course. At the end of chapter 4, after Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman, which we looked at last week, Jesus heals an official son who is near the point of death. His second miracle. Then here at the beginning of chapter 5, we're introduced to another helpless person. This time he's back down in Jerusalem. And here's what happens. Down in this area of Jerusalem where this miracle takes place and where this man is laying, it's actually pretty well attested. We know in Jerusalem today where this likely was. Archaeology is pretty firm because enough is known about ancient Jerusalem. We're pretty sure, scholars are, where this is. At that time, though, as alluded to here, there is a pool that fed from a natural source of water other places. Whether for divine reasons or for natural ones, the water would occasionally get stirred up and agitated somehow, enough that you could notice what was going on in there. Well, there was a popular belief at that time that if you were disabled or if you were sick, you could be, and you were the first person to get in the pool after the water started moving around, that you would be healed. It's kind of like how people feel about essential oils today, right? You take the right one at the right time, magic happens. I kid if you're into essential oils, just joking. But there was a popular belief, and we don't know how much there was to give into it, but that was what people believed. Now, we need to comment on something here. You'll notice if you have a English Standard Version, what we're reading from today, you'll notice there's no verse 4 in this section. This will happen a few other times in John as well. There's other places it happens in the New Testament. But your version, if it's different than the English Standard Version, might include it in the text with brackets around it, or might have it as a footnote at the bottom. I think the ESV has it as a footnote. The reason is that's because the earliest versions of the Gospel of John, the oldest copies that we have, do not contain verse 4, which likely means someone at some point said, this story is a little confusing. What if we added in another line that would kind of help people understand what the heck this pool is all about? It's called a gloss in studying ancient documents, someone trying to help people out, and so added that in. But the reason I don't include it, and the reason Bibles like the ESV put it as a footnote, is it's likely not authoritative, meaning since it wasn't written by the original author, the Apostle John, we should not include it as inspired by the Holy Spirit himself. We'll see this come up in a big way with a very famous story in John chapter 8. We'll get there in a few weeks. You don't need to worry about it now, but I just give that as a comment here because it's important when we look at it. But we can gather enough of the important details from what is before us without verse 4. Notice in verse 3, there are many disabled persons here near this pool, right? People who are blind, people who can't walk, some people who are paralyzed. This is like a skid row in ancient Jerusalem for those who have physical disabilities. John introduces us to one particular man who's extremely desperate. He's had this condition of being unable to walk for 38 years. John tells us Jesus saw this particular man as he was going by. He knew his condition and how long he'd been there. And he moves to ask this man, do you want to be healed? The man's response is to tell Jesus essentially, well, yeah, of course, I'd like to be healed, but there's no one who can get me in this dang water after the waters get stirred up. None of my friends are here. No one's going to help me out. So I'm sitting here helpless. This continues to show a pattern, right, in the last few chapters of John, of people trusting in something else literal before them other than Jesus, who is standing before them to help them. Nicodemus was trusting in literal birth, thought Jesus was mentioning, should I go back inside my mother if I'm to be born again? The Samaritan woman, of course, thinks, you got nothing to draw up from this well here. And this man thinks this pool is what has magical healing powers. In each scene, Jesus turns their eyes away from those things and turns them directly to himself. The man would have been laying on a light mat, likely made of straw, what he calls his bed here. Jesus immediately tells him, not, here, let me help you down into the pool. Let me go talk to some angels to stir it up, and then you'll go down and we'll fix this. He tells him directly, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. And without needing to be taken down to the water, without needing water at all, he's instantly healed, picks up his bed, and starts to walk away. Apparently it was a crowded area and he lost track of Jesus really quickly here. But verse 8 introduces us to a new conflict, and this is probably the main reason John includes it for us here. This happened on the Sabbath. Sundown Friday to sundown Saturday for our Jewish friends. What are Jews forbidden to do on the Sabbath? Any sort of work, right? And it turns out the Pharisees and other rabbinic consensus during that time had determined there were 39 specific areas you were not supposed to work. Those 39 areas are not laid out in the Torah or anywhere in the Old Testament, but religious traditions, we have our own kind of things that kind of develop over time. They're like, this whole not supposed to work thing, we need to kind of define that more, so we'll make 39 areas. One of those areas is you can't carry something significant on the Sabbath. The bed, this guy's bed, qualifies as carrying something significant, and they won't have it at all. It's deeply ironic, isn't it? That instead of celebrating a miraculous thing that has happened to someone who's been disabled for 38 years, unable to walk, they're upset about the rules being broken. Talk about missing the forest for the trees. The man even tells them, guys, I was healed. It was that guy who healed me, who told me to walk. Go talk to him. I had nothing to do with this. And they didn't respond with, you know what, you're totally right. This is amazing. We need to celebrate. We need to thank God. We need to praise him for the miracle that he has done today. Let's not focus on this Sabbath nitty gritty. Let's go celebrate what God has done in your life. No, they want to find out who told him it was okay to break the rules. Later, Jesus again had somehow, big crowd, slipped away. The man loses track of him, but Jesus eventually later goes back and finds him. Gives him a parting encouragement and exhortation, says, see, you're well now. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you. Strange saying, but the implication may be that now that he has been changed by Jesus, be changed and believe in who God is and who I am and what I've done. Otherwise, a worse judgment than being unable to walk may come to you, likely referring to a judgment after death. The fact that the guy goes and tells the religious leaders right away that it was him, Jesus, who had healed him, could display somewhat that he hasn't really had a change of heart and he was up to serving the needs of the religious leaders. We can't really tell from the text. It's not extremely clear. Either way, we now have an epic battle brewing between Jesus and the religious leaders. Jesus' response purposefully, I love when Jesus does this, he purposefully ratchets up the tension right away by saying, my Father is working until now, and I am working now. We have to stop here and realize how profound this statement is from Jesus and exactly what he is saying when he says this. Judaism, of course, if you come from a Jewish background, you have lots of Jewish friends in our area, you probably have Jewish friends yourself. Judaism is a profoundly monotheistic religion, right? If you're familiar with the Shema, it's Deuteronomy 6:4. It's one of the most repeated phrases on the lips of our Jewish friends. It's an extremely beautiful section of the Torah. It says, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. There is only one of our God. And of course, the Ten Commandments, another extremely famous section. The first two begin with this: you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image. Don't go make another god or any likeness of anything that's in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. God is one. There's no one else. Don't go making for yourself other gods than the only one. God is uniquely the only God in Judaism. And in creation, of course, he worked to create all things, right? Resting and celebrating on the final day, the Sabbath day, the seventh day. But even God was at work every weekly Sabbath day until now. In fact, in my looking at some of the commentaries for this, there was all sorts of rabbinic arguments about, on the Sabbath, does God himself work? Well, if he doesn't work, if he does work, that means God's breaking the Sabbath. But if he doesn't work, that means the whole universe falls apart. And eventually consensus came to, no, God still does stuff on the Sabbath because the world would completely fall apart. He's God. He upholds the universe by the word of his power, but he does celebrate and command his people to rest. Jesus later goes on to say The Sabbath was made for man. It was made for us to rest and celebrate. God doesn't need rest. He is able to do everything all the time. So God does not take Saturdays off. He continues to work in joy 24/7, 365. He never sleeps and never slumbers. But look what else the God of the Israelites, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God who revealed himself to Moses says, "See now that I, even I, am he, and there is no God besides me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal, and there is none that can deliver out of my hand." Deuteronomy 32. There is no God besides him, and he's the giver of life, having the power to resurrect the dead as well as take away life. Not only that, the Jews came to understand this God was not only one, not only the resurrector of life, but also the judge of every human soul. And salvation could alone be found in him. Look at Isaiah chapter 51, verses 4-6. "Give attention to me, my people, and give ear to me, my nation, for a law will go out from me, and I will set my justice for a light to the peoples. My righteousness draws near. My salvation has gone out, and my arms will judge the peoples. The coastlands hope for me, and for my arm they will wait, but my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will never be dismayed." God is one. He is the giver and the resurrector of life. He is the judge of all the earth, and salvation can alone be found in him. And he never stops working, upholding the universe. This is what everyone who was a faithful Jew in Jesus' day would have believed about God Almighty. Now, back to Jesus' words in John 5:17. "My Father, God," the one you all know, the one whose scriptures we just all looked at, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." What is Jesus saying? What kind of amazing, unique relationship is this Jesus of Nazareth claiming to have with God Almighty, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who spoke directly to Moses? Well, we don't have to wonder long. Look again at his explanation, starting in verse 19. Jesus says to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son, I can't do anything on my own accord, but only what I see my Father doing." It was radical enough. He's saying, "My Father." It wasn't even common in this day to say "our Father" for most Jewish people who were religious. So to say "my Father" is claiming a unique, intimate relationship. Whatever the Father does, the Son does likewise. For the Father loves the Son, shows him all that he himself is doing. Greater works than these will he show him, so that you may marvel. For as the Father raises the dead and gives life to them, so also the Son gives life to whom he will. For the Father judges no one, but he's given judgment to the Son. My relationship with my Father is so close and so unique, we cannot be separated. Indeed, as my Father raises the dead and gives life, so I give life to whom I will. Remember the resurrector of life you heard about in Deuteronomy? That's me now. And you believe God's the God of all the earth, right? The one God. Well, my relationship with my Father is so unique, he's now entrusted me with all judgment. I am now the judge of every human heart. He continues in verse 25. "Not only am I the resurrector of the dead, but the hour is now here. It's coming and it's now here, when the dead will hear my voice and they will live." The resurrection starts today, everyone. Those who hear me and believe in me will live forever. And again, it stresses that the Father has given him authority to execute judgment now. And in the final verse, Jesus looks forward not to this day, but to the last day. He says, the hour is coming. Notice this time he doesn't say, and is here now. This is how he knows he's exclusively looking upon the future. And the hour is coming when all who are in tombs will hear his voice and come out, those who have done good to the resurrection of life, those who've done evil to the resurrection of judgment. You are all caught up in this one guy carrying his bed on a Saturday. You need to be getting ready for the day when I will be the final judge that you will stand before. And all will raise from the dead, some to life and some to everlasting judgment and spiritual death. Who is this Jesus of Nazareth? He is clearly no mere rabbi, no mere New York Times bestseller, no mere TED Talk speaker, no mere celebrity influencer, no mere worldly politician, no mere vengeful dictator, not even an earthly king. Who is Jesus of Nazareth? The Jews hearing him understood exactly what he was saying in verse 18. This is why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. This is Jesus of Nazareth. He is the Son of God. He alone is the true Son of the Father, so intimate that there has been eternal love and an unbreakable bond between the Father and the Son that goes back forever and ever and ever. Between the first person of the Trinity, God the Father, and him, the second person, God the Son. This is Jesus of Nazareth, equal with God the Father in every way. He is the healer of the nations who reverses the curse of Genesis so that the lame walk and dance and pick up their bed and walk. He is the one who brings great Sabbath rest to our souls. He is the one that takes the captive and the slave so that they are freed. Who is the one who lifts up the poor and brings down the proud. He is the giver and the resurrector of life from Deuteronomy. He is the judge of all the earth, so that all those who have done good and all those who have done evil will rise, and all of you in this room and me will rise and stand before him in final judgment one day. His Father has been working for all of eternity past. And now he tells us here in this room, and now I'm working. And I've been working. Let me ask, do you know him? Do you trust him? Do you know where you will stand on that last day when you stand before him? Do you know if you will go away into resurrection of life? Or do you know if you'll go into everlasting judgment? You can know. You can be sure. He tells us how. Verse 24, truly, truly, I, Jesus, say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. Do you believe Jesus? Then you believe God. Do you trust Jesus? Then you trust God. And if you do, you've already begun the resurrection to life. You've already passed from death to life. You've already not come into judgment. Do you know him? If you don't, this could be the first day you decide to start trusting him. Let's pray. Father, it's hard to think of people who have physically suffered more than someone who is completely unable to walk for 38 years. Someone who is sitting on the sidewalk of one of the busiest streets in the ancient world, unable to get up, unable to pick up his own bed, trusting in folk religion, trusting in supposed magical powers of a pool. And then you walk along, and simply by telling him, he's changed forever. Jesus, thank you that you have all power. Thank you that you are the resurrector of life. You are the healer of the nations. Thank you that you are the judge of every human heart. Because all of us who have had a chance to know you for a while know you are good. You are just. You are beautiful. You are fair. You are kind. Like those who were spiritually dead, spiritually unable to walk for however many years before we met you, you showed up to us and said, stand up, have life, come awake. And you rescued us, you saved us, you changed us, you forgave us, you brought us alive. God, help us to continue to trust in you and your power and your uniqueness, to not forget you alone are God, to not put our hope in other things. For those in here who have not trusted you, who have not put their faith in you, who have not believed in you, I pray you would break down any walls they have. You would give them the answers that they need. They would see you clearly, that they may be able to start following you. Speak to their hearts, Lord, we pray. Speak to all of us in your name. In Jesus' name, amen.